everybody, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Self-Worth Saturday. If you are new here, let me give you the lay of the land. So each week that I do a Self-Worth Saturday video, the format's going to look a little something like this. I will have a weekly topic that I will ramble about a little bit. I'll give you hopefully some tangible information and also some tangible action steps, if I could talk, to take to help you make progress in that particular area of your life. Please note that all this is based on my own personal experience. I am not any kind of psychologist, professional, anything like that. This is really anecdotally the sort of thing that I have found to be really, really helpful in my journey is really shedding light on these sorts of topics. I'm holding a little crystal, by the way. This is a golden healer, for those of you curious. So I have found that really shedding light on topics like this demystifies them and gives us an opportunity to explore ideas that maybe we wouldn't explore as much unprompted. So each week I'll ramble on about the topic a little bit, give you some hopefully tangible information and action steps, some journal prompts to dive into if you are the type of person that really enjoys doing some journal work or personal deep dive sort of stuff in order to get the most out of the topic. And I usually come up with some sort of weekly challenge, something that we can all participate in to work on that particular thing. And I like to close with an oracle card reading. So just a reminder, if you have topics related to self-worth, self-image, any of that sort of stuff that you would like me to cover in this series, please don't be shy. Leave it in the comments down below or send me an email at tarotwithlisa@gmail.com. or message me on Facebook or Instagram, or join us in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group. I have been running a weekly poll to check in with the group and see what everybody wants me to cover next. So this was the winner this week. This week's topic is all about standing up for ourselves. Now, before I dive into this week's topic, let's talk about last week. So last week we covered self-trust, and the challenge was to just pay attention throughout the week, to notice where you tend to trust yourself the most and where you tend to struggle to trust yourself, and just let it be information from a non-judgmental place, information about ourselves and sort of how we cope day to day, how we trust ourselves day to day. So if you are in the live chat right now while this video is premiering, I would love it if you would share how last week went for you so we can chat about that a little bit as we watch this video. Or if you're watching this after the fact and feel comfortable sharing in the comments box, I would love to hear how you guys did and if you noticed anything interesting about how you do and don't trust yourself over the past week. Here's how I did. So I noticed that I trust myself the least when it comes to communicating with, particularly in my relationships, so with Peggy. Whenever I'm communicating something that is not immediately happy or comfortable, I immediately doubt my approach, and because I approach the situation from a lack of self-trust, I've noticed that I'm much more likely to stumble over my words and end up saying something I don't mean, or end up wording myself in a way that's not helpful. So I've been trying to move into those conversations with a little bit more self-trust, and I've noticed that when I do that, things go much smoother, and I'm able to say what I want to say without ending up saying a whole lot of other stuff that like complicates the situation. So that has been very helpful. And as far as where I do trust myself, I've noticed that I have the most confidence in any area of study or my hobbies. So I trust my intuition when I'm giving tarot readings. I trust my gut when it comes to decks to choose and how I interpret cards and all of that stuff. My default is self-trust. But as soon as you involve like an interpersonal relationship, that self-trust kind of goes out the window a little bit. So it's been useful to me to notice where that's showing up. I hope that you guys got something useful out of that exercise as well. Let's talk though about standing up for ourselves. This is not easy, and it's kind of a complex issue, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what this is all about. So when we talk about standing up for ourselves, what we're really talking about is we want to be able to express to the people in our lives when they've hurt our feelings, or when a behavior is unacceptable, when something isn't working for us. And for a lot of us, that's difficult because we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to defend the boundaries that we've maybe just figured out how to put into place in the first place. And boundaries is a whole other rabbit hole that we're probably going to do an entire video on because, oh boy, that's a big topic all by itself. But standing up for ourselves is when we have a situation where something's made us uncomfortable or we're unhappy about something and we want to be able to express that at all. And we also want to be able to express that in a healthy way. So I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like when we're not standing up for ourselves. So when we're not standing up for ourselves, we might have a tendency to feel mistreated, disempowered. We might have resentment that builds, especially with the people in our lives that are constantly trampling on the boundaries that we haven't really told them about. So that starts to create this sort of simmering undercurrent of discomfort, not only for us, but often for the people in our lives who sense that something is off, but they don't know what. This also shows up when we're really unhappy about something, but we don't want to bring it up because we don't know how, and people ask us how we are, and we're like, we're fine. We really wish that those people could just read our minds. That would really make things a lot easier and also way more complicated. Let's not wish for everybody to be able to read our minds. No, bad idea. So that's one thing that can happen. Another thing that happens is that sometimes we end up feeling like we're taking it. When something happens that makes us feel uncomfortable. So then we feel like we're taking it until it's too much, and then we blow up because we haven't expressed along the way how we've been feeling. There's like this simmering thing that actually gets bigger and bigger until it erupts. And we all know that that's not awesome. And I think we intrinsically believe and understand that that is not great for the people around us. And I think we also understand that that's not great for ourselves. Another thing that can show up is maybe we say nothing and we just quietly suffer. And then we end up feeling like we're being everybody's doormat. And that's not awesome. So, yeah. So let's talk about sort of why this happens or why we struggle with this. So for starters, for a lot of us, we just haven't had role models who have modeled for us the kind of behavior that is an empowered, standing up for ourselves kind of behavior. So if you haven't had a parent or a teacher or a role model or an adult in your life when you were young that taught you that your feelings and your voice matters and that it's good and healthy to verbally or verbalize your boundaries or what is and isn't okay, if you didn't have a lot of that leadership growing up, for good or for, like, whether it was intentional or it was just like, you know, an oversight or whatever, but if it hasn't been modeled for you and you haven't been taught that, then you don't have a basis or a foundation for knowing how to stand up for yourself in the first place. Another thing that happens is maybe we just haven't experienced healthy assertiveness from other people in our lives. If the people you have ended up being surrounded by or have surrounded yourself by tend to be the kind of people who are passive-aggressive when they're irritated or who beat around the bush or who aren't very direct, then you don't really even know what that looks like to be different, and it's constantly modeled for you that indirect passive aggression and that sort of thing is the way to deal with it. And so you haven't, it's not normalized for you. It's just not what you're surrounded by. And the other thing that, and really this is kind of, I think, the root of it for a lot of us, is that we haven't really had a chance to explore or define for ourselves the key difference or that fine line between being assertive and being aggressive or passive aggressive or manipulative or all of those other things. And so we feel like we're in really, like we're walking on very thin ice to try to stand up for ourselves because we're like, well, we don't want to be a jerk. And in our effort to not be a jerk, we sometimes end up devaluing our own needs, not expressing them properly, and getting ourselves into this whole mess in the first place. So, here's the thing. I relate to all of that. Assertiveness and healthy assertiveness was not modeled for me growing up, and because I led a very sheltered childhood, I wasn't given opportunity to really see other families and how they might deal with that sort of thing. I was definitely not encouraged to speak up if I was unhappy about something, and was kind of taught that my job was to swallow it and put a smile on my face, and that was that. I wasn't really taught that my feelings were important, or that my opinions mattered, or my boundaries mattered, or any of that. Now, that's my experience, but your experience might be different. Maybe you learned that, but you've had difficulty practicing it. You're not alone. Lots of people have struggled with this, even when it's been modeled for them their whole lives. You could have had Brady Bunch, maybe that's a terrible example. I haven't watched the Brady Bunch in a long time, but maybe you had that sort of classic, healthy, good communication family, but then as you've grown older, you found it more difficult. No matter how you got here, the fact is that we're here, and sometimes it's tough to voice our displeasure about something or voice when we need something to change. Most of the time, it's a fear thing. We're afraid the other person isn't going to respond well, and we might lose that person, or that person might respond badly and make us feel worse. There's all of these what ifs that we play out in our head because we just don't know how it's going to go. And if you're like me, you kind of want to know how it's going to go before you put yourself out there. That would be nice. I really wish we would just know all the time how it was going to go, but then what would we learn? So there's that. But I really think that for a lot of us, it's that fear of displeasing somebody, which kind of circles back to people pleasing, which we covered a couple of weeks ago, and I will throw that up in the cards because helpful. The cards won't be visible probably till after this video is live sometime, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get my act together and do it sooner than that, but maybe. So here's the thing. In order to change this, we need to rewire our thinking a little bit. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is that you don't need, in order to speak up about something that's made you uncomfortable or that you need differently, or somebody's done something that stepped on your toes and they didn't realize, or maybe they did, you don't have to prove or validate why you need that to go differently. In other words, you don't have to tick off a bunch of boxes about why your displeasure or your discomfort or your unhappiness is valid in order to speak up. You could be unhappy because the color red offends you. This is a terrible example, but just roll with it with me for a moment. Maybe the color red is really offensive to you. Maybe there's something about it that just really, really bothers you. You can say, if you can do it in a respectful and healthy way, you can say to somebody, it really bothers me when you wear red because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Is that other person obligated to stop wearing red forever because you said something? No, but that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to say it. And it doesn't mean you're not allowed to open the discussion. And sometimes I think we hold ourselves back because we want to have some sort of valid reason, proof, or justification for why something makes us uncomfortable. And so we either wait and build a case for ourselves before we speak up, or we just don't speak up. And that doesn't help anybody, because then you're just quietly uncomfortable, and probably the other people in your life can sense you're uncomfortable and they don't know why. And then if they're worst case scenario thinkers like I am and so many other people, they're convinced it's something they did. And it is. They wore red. And if only they knew it was that simple to make you more comfortable, some people might just wear a different freaking color just to be nice. You never know. But you won't know if you don't speak up. So definitely give yourself permission to have a conversation, even if you think it's silly. It's okay to communicate that, especially if you're doing it in a non-blamey way. More on that in a second. So the second thing is that you're unlikely to be, we're going to talk a little bit actually about assertive versus aggressive, and so this will make more sense in a second, but you are less likely to be assertive and much more likely to be aggressive or react badly or handle the situation badly if you're reacting in the heat of the moment. So one of the things you can do to help yourself is that if you decide something is bothering you or something needs to be said or you would like to say something about a thing, give yourself permission to take a step back, to take a step away from the heat of the situation or the moment, take some deep breaths, sort out what you really think and feel, sort out what you think you need to change so that you can be clear when you go to that other person and calm. Because if you're standing up for yourself in the heat of an argument or in the heat of a moment, you're much more likely to come across more attacky and less communicative. So if you want to aim for good, healthy, assertive communication, try to do it from a place of calm and neutrality. Peggy and I sometimes, when we are having conversations that might be charged or where we need to talk about something that might put the other person on edge, we will go for a drive. We'll go grab a coffee. We'll put ourselves on sort of neutral territory, and we'll take some time to just give each other our undivided attention, and that makes a huge difference in how the conversation goes. So here's the thing about assertive versus aggressive. I'm going to get a little technical here because I think this is the territory that can be so difficult to navigate when you're trying to figure out how it is that you can speak up without being a jerk. So let's look at just textbook definitions, and by textbook I mean like the Cambridge Dictionary. So aggressive, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is behaving in an angry or violent way towards another person. See previous point about taking that breather and thinking things through before you stand up for yourself, because there's a difference between standing up for yourself and defending yourself or going on the attack. So it's really kind of clear to be in the right important to be clear that you're in the right headspace. Now, assertiveness, per the Cambridge Dictionary, is someone who is assertive behaves confidently and is not frightened to say what they want or believe. Hello, is that not the most perfect definition for what it is we're trying to accomplish here? We want to feel like we are not being anybody's doormat. We want to feel like we can speak up when somebody oversteps, and we want to do it without behaving angrily or violently, verbally or anything, right, towards that other person. So if you take that breather to sort out what you feel, that's the first step. And then the second thing that's important here is that you are able to clearly communicate what it is. So, sorry, let me back up. Psychology Today, this was another note that I put that I think is super relevant here. Psychology Today defines assertiveness as a person who is assertive, clearly communicates his or her wishes and sets boundaries, but does not necessarily make demands of other people or lash out if requests are not met. So, here's the thing. If you're going to stand up for yourself, if you're going to make a statement, be prepared for it to not go the way that you expect. If you go into that conversation planning what the other person is going to say back and how you'll handle that, and you try to cover all these contingencies, then you've moved away from standing up for yourself and being assertive and into the slippery slope land of trying to control the outcome, which we don't want to do that. That's not a healthy place to sort of go. At least it's not for me. So please remember everything I say very much from my me place. So your mileage may vary, as always. So one of the things that you can do is practice being assertive without overpowering the other person out of fear that they won't respond the way that you want. So here's kind of what I mean. I'm going to give you an example. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. So here's an example. Let's say this happened. It's been a while. So we'll be able to expand in the chat afterwards if you're around. Let's say I want Peggy to stop teasing me in front of the cashier at the grocery store. Now, one thing you want to do is not overpower, and you also don't want to minimize your own request, because then you're disempowering yourself even as you speak. So here's an example of a minimizing thing I could say. I could say, I'm really sorry, but I don't really want you to tease me in front of the cashier. I know you're just teasing and I know you're having fun, but I'm just not sure I'm okay with it. So in that statement, I've apologized, I've kind of given permission, and I've kind of waffled a little bit about how strongly I feel. If what I feel is this makes me uncomfortable and I want her to stop, then I need to communicate that in a much less minimizing way, because I feel stronger about it than I indicate in that statement. And I hope that makes sense. Here's an example of an overpowering thing. Now this is where I tend to do this the most. So, for example, please don't tease me in front of the cashier. You know how it makes me feel, and I really wish you would stop, because the thing is, it really gets to me, and then I get upset, and then I get cranky, and if you would just stop, we could avoid all of that. Now, Peggy and I not so affectionately call this word vomit, because when I am stressed about saying something or speaking up for myself, I'm really likely to give a whole list of justifications and reasons and explanations and detail that just ends up making the other person feel like they are being attacked, like out of completely left field. And all I really want to do is say, hey, I don't like this, please don't do it. So here's the balance. When you tease me in front of the cashier at the grocery store, I get really embarrassed and I feel uncomfortable. And then just stop talking. If you can manage that, and occasionally I do, it goes really well because the other person is like, oh, I'm making you uncomfortable and I didn't realize. And it's usually as simple as that. Not everybody's going to respond awesome to you being assertive, especially if you never have before. But if you start practicing it, and especially on things that you're less invested in the answer to, like in little things, it's a little bit easier the more you do it. So finally, be prepared for the fact that, and I think I've mentioned this before, but be prepared for the fact that the conversation might not go the way that you want it to. Just because you've said, I don't like it when you do A, B, C, doesn't mean the other person is going to agree with you. And you need to know going into the conversation, is this something that you are open to a conversation about, or is it a hard limit boundary that you're just going to lay out there? If it's a hard boundary, then you need to be clear about that in the beginning. I really don't like it when you tease me in front of the cashier. I really need you to stop. And if the other person says, well, I like doing it and too bad for you, then maybe you need to re-examine your relationship with that person in the sense that you need to figure out, are they able to respect some of these boundaries? And maybe what you bring up is something that makes them feel a certain way, and you guys need to go back and forth. But if you're not open to the conversation, or you're not open to, or the subject isn't open for negotiation, don't pretend that's not the case. Go in with your eyes wide open and be prepared to own up to that if that's where you're at. Sometimes I have to say to Peggy, look, I don't know why, but I'm really fixated on this one thing. I'm not feeling very flexible right now. It is what it is. And she'll be like, okay. Or she'll be like, well, I want to do something different, so we're going to have to do different things for this period of time or whatever. But if I own it, that I'm not really open to other ideas, then she at least knows what she's sort of dealing with, and she can make her own adult decisions. I'm already at 22 minutes, y'all, so I gotta wrap this up. So hopefully this gives you some ways that you can kind of reframe the idea of speaking up for yourself, and you can think of some ways you can apply these other techniques to make it a little easier. But I will say that it's easiest if you can basically state what it is that you want. I want to kind of recap this really quickly. What it is that you want to change, how that thing makes you feel, how it affects you, and how it makes you feel. If you focus on how the thing is affecting you and not blaming the other person for what they're doing wrong, because they might be doing something totally normal for them and it's just not something that's normal or okay for you. So if you can keep the focus on you and just not over-explain and not minimize, you might be surprised at the result. So with that said, couple journal prompts to dive a little deeper on this topic. First, write about the types of things that you want to be more assertive about and why. Why is it important to you to be more assertive about those things? 2, write about the person or people in your life that you have the hardest time being assertive with and why you think that is. And there's no wrong answers to any of these. This is just personal exploration. And finally, 3, try to think of a time when you were assertive and it went well, if any. And what do you remember about that experience and how it made you feel? So these are just exercises to help you get a little bit deeper. I am going to be pulling an oracle card from the Animal Kin Oracle. So I'm going to shuffle that guy up. And while I do, I will tell you about our challenge for the week. And just a reminder, if you enjoy this video, please don't forget to click the little thumbs up button, the little like. It helps a lot. And if you are new here and you enjoy this kind of content, then definitely subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when YouTube's working properly of my future videos. So our challenge for the week. One time this week, try to make one clear and conscientious assertive request. It can be something super small or something large. Remember to think it through and then make your statement or your request without being either overpowering or minimizing. So one little bit of assertiveness at some point in the week. And you know what? If there's nothing you feel the need to be assertive over or the desire to be assertive over, then don't like force it to happen. But if there is something you notice that bothers you with somebody in your life or a situation, just give yourself an opportunity to try this, to practice this. Because like with anything else, the most progress comes when we allow ourselves to practice. All right, and our oracle card is a praying mantis, patience. So as I was just saying, it's really important when you're working on any of these big things, these things that we don't have a ton of experience in or that we are really challenged to do, remember to be gentle with yourself. Remember to give yourself a break, to be kind and non-judgmental of how you're doing, and to try little baby steps and then just see where it goes from there. So this video will be up on Saturday morning. You'll be seeing it. And if you happen to be around to hang out with us in the live chat afterwards, please do join us. I would love to see you there. And if you're watching this on replay, we do keep this video and the live chat both up available for replay. And I hope that this was helpful in some way. And as always, I hope that it serves your highest good. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.